Hey, I'm glad you're here. My name is Patrick Domingues, and in this video you'll be shown how to configure a Windows server and a Unifi controller for RADIUS Wi-Fi access. If you find this tutorial helpful, please do me a favor and click on that share, like, and subscribe button. If you would like to follow along, the link to this tutorial will be in the description below. I wanted to mention why this would be useful. So let's say you have an employee that is terminated. Instead of changing the Wi-Fi password every time someone is let go, we can just disable their Active Directory account and they'll no longer have access to your internal Wi-Fi. This makes things a whole lot easier for your help desk and less tickets, right? Nobody wants to work on tickets to just change Wi-Fi passwords. For this tutorial, there are some prereqs we'll need to have. You should have an internal Wi-Fi controller. I am using a UDM Pro for that function. If you have a cloud-hosted controller, you can set this up on a cloud controller. However, you'll need to open up some ports on your firewall and create some rules that only allow your cloud-hosted controller to communicate with your RADIUS server. Your Unifi equipment, like the switches and the access points, should have a static IP address assigned to them outside of your DHCP scope. You'll want to take note of those IP addresses and the device names, so go ahead and write them down or put it on a note because you'll need these later. Make sure you have a new physical or virtual server. I'm going to be using Windows Server 2019 to get this up and running. I called my new virtual server HDN Radius. It has 1 vCPU, 4 gigs, and 60 gigs of hard drive space. You don't need much to run a Radius server. Make sure you have all the Windows updates installed before you get started. Also assign a static IP address to that Radius server. And make sure to join that Radius server to the domain. If you don't have a domain controller with Active Directory, make sure to stand that up first. At this point, before you get started, make sure you have a newly created backup, both for your domain controller and your new Radius server, or a virtual snapshot so you can roll back just in case anything funky happens. Try not to install these Radius server roles on the domain controller. I'm a firm believer of keeping your domain controller nice and clean. Alright, so let's get started with installing the required Windows Server roles on your Radius server. Right here on my right, I have my newly stood up Radius server with Windows Server 2019. Go ahead and open up your server manager if it's not already opened and click on Add Roles and Features. From here, you want to go down to Server Selection, continue with your Radius server until you're down to server roles. Select Active Directory Certificate Services. Click on Add Features. Locate Network Policy and Access Services. Click on that and then click on Add Features. Afterwards, locate Remote Access and click Next. On this features page, you don't need to select anything there, so click Next. Go ahead and move forward and click Next to bypass ADCS onto Role Services. Certificate Authority should be checked, so go ahead and click Next again. Click Next past this section onto Remote Access. You can read all that if you'd like, and then click Next again. Here we want to select the checkbox for Direct Access and VPN RAS. In this pop-up, click Add Features. Move forward with clicking Next. Click Next again. Under role services, you'll keep everything the same here. And then click next. On this section, you can review everything that you're going to be installing. Once you're done that, go ahead and click Install. Once it's successfully installed, you'll get a message that says installation succeeded on your Radius server. So let's wait a moment or two till this is completed. Alright, so the installation succeeded on my Radius server. From here you can close this wizard. Now what we'll be doing next is opening up firewall ports needed on this server so the UDM Pro can communicate with the Radius server. Let's go ahead and search for advanced and open up Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security. Now that your Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security window is open, go ahead and click on inbound rules, and then afterwards right click new rule, select the radio button for port, afterwards click next. This is going to be a UDP port, and the specified port will be 1812. Click next. Yes, we want to allow connection. Click next here as well. And then afterwards, we'll want to name this inbound rule. So I'm gonna choose Radius UDP 1812. Then click finished. This is the only port that you actually need to open. So once you're done with that, you can close out of your Windows Defender Firewall window. So next we're going to configure Active Directory certificate services. If you don't have your server manager window open, go ahead and get that opened here, and we'll get started. Up at the top right, you want to click on the notifications section, and then click on Configure Active Directory Certificate Services. Your certificate wizard will pop up. Now for credentials, you want to specify a domain administrator. I'm going to stick with my default domain administrator, but in your case, you can choose whatever domain account you'd like. Once that's done, go ahead and click on Next. And then we are going to be configuring certification authority. Once that's checked, click Next. We're going to utilize Enterprise CA because we want it to communicate with the domain controller. Leave root CA selected and click Next. We're going to create a new private key and click Next. In this section here, now you can increase your algorithm to whatever specifications that require for your network, but in most cases this default will suffice. Go ahead and click Next. Double check your CA details here. It should look similar on your end. Go ahead and click Next after you double check that. The certificate valid period, I like to set that for 100 years so I don't have to worry about renewing the certificate or breaking anything on the network. And once you added your preferred year amount, go ahead and click Next. The default location for the logging will do. Go ahead and click Next. And then once you reach the confirmation page, review what you have there. And if you're happy with what you see, click Configure. Awesome. So the configuration succeeded. That's good. That's what we want to see. You can go ahead and close out of that window. And now we're going to move forward with configuring our network policy server. Now let's go ahead and make sure you have Windows Server Manager opened again. Here at the top right, you'll want to click Tools, locate Network Policy Server. Once your Network Policy Server is opened up, we will get started with setting up a standard configuration for your Radius server. Now here in the middle of this field you have standard configuration. You'll want to click on the drop down and click Radius server for wireless or wired connections. Once that's selected, click on configure 802.1x. On this window we're going to select secure wireless connections. You can name this whatever you like, but I'm going to stick with secure wireless connections. That will do. Click next. Here on Radius clients, you remember when I told you you needed static IP addresses and to note down what the make and model of your Unifi equipment were? This is the section where we're going to jot down all that information. So let's go ahead and click add. Friendly name for me, I'm going to get started with my UDM Pro and add the IP address. Here you'll want to select a shared secret. Here you'll want to select a shared secret. That shared secret will be utilized within your UDM controller as well. So you'll want to write this down. Once that's done, click OK. And you're going to want to repeat again to add the rest of your equipment. I also have a Unifi AC Pro that I need to add on here. Use the same shared secret and click OK. Now you're going to rinse and repeat. You're going to add all your equipment in there, all your access points that will be communicating with the Radius server. Once that's done, move forward with clicking next. Here from the drop down, we will want to select Microsoft Protected EAP and click next. And here we're going to specify what group we want to add to the Radius server. This group will dictate who has the ability to get connected to your wireless SSIDs. In my case, I'm just going to use domain users. You can create a specific group in your Active Directory and assign users, but I'm just keeping it simple, so I'm just going to choose domain users, and anybody in the network with a domain account can access the Wi-Fi. Once that's done, go ahead and click next. Here you don't have to change anything. Default traffic controls are fine, then go ahead and click next. Now we are at the last page. Review what you have there, make sure everything's correct, and then click finish. Now within the network policy server, there is one last step we'll have to take, and that is to register this server with Active Directory. Go ahead and right click on NPS and go down to register server in Active Directory. You'll get a pop-up and click OK on that. You'll get a second pop-up and click OK on that. Awesome. So now we are actually done with network policy server, and you can close out of that. We'll move forward to the next section here. Now we're going to be creating a group policy in your Active Directory / domain controller server. So go ahead and remote connect into that, and we will get started. So once you're in your Active Directory server, I'll open up Group Policy Management. Now, your group policy management will vary depending on what OUs you have, organizational units, right? I have an OU for my users here, and the majority of the policies are within it. For you, it may vary. You probably have users scattered throughout in different OUs. And if that's the case, you'd want to drop this policy down to maybe either the top root placement of your domain or within each OU. So I'm going to right click my OU and create a new GPO. Here I'm just going to name it Radius. Everybody will know what that is, right? Once that's created, let's go ahead and locate it by expanding your organizational unit. select your newly created policy, and within security filtering, you will want to add that security group that you created, or if you're sticking with domain users like I am, you just type in domain users. Once that's done, we will want to right-click Radius and edit the policy so we can add some specifications in there. Now we're going to drill down to public key policies. So let's go ahead and expand computer configuration and then policies, followed by Windows settings, and then security settings, and locate public key policies. Here, we're going to right click on certificate services client and click on policies right after. On this properties window, we'll want to enable renew expired certificates, update certificate templates, and then click apply here. Afterwards, go into automatic certificate request settings, right click, new certificate request, click next. This is going to be a certificate for computers. Click next and click finish, and you're done there. Now you can close out of group policy management, and we'll get started with configuring your Unifi controller and a wireless SSID to use your Windows Radius server. Alright, so now that you have your Unifi controller open, in my case it's going to be my UDM Pro, go down to your settings gear icon, click on advanced features, scroll down until you find Radius. We're going to click on add Radius profile. We're going to name it, leave these two sliders unchecked, go down to Radius settings. Here we're going to apply the static IP address of the Radius server. In my case, it's 192.168.2.245. Keep port 1812 the same. This shared secret goes back to when you were adding those Unifi devices to NPS. That same password that you added to those devices will go here. Once you typed that in, go ahead and click add. We're going to enable accounting. Type in the static IP address of your Radius server. We'll keep port 1813 open, the same shared secret, and click add. Afterwards, click apply changes. Now let's go to Wi-Fi. We're going to add a new Wi-Fi network, and I'm going to name this HDN Wi-Fi. We're not going to enter a password because our Radius server is going to be doing all that for us, right? Your network name may vary. If you haven't edited your network name, it would probably say default. Once you selected your network, go down to advanced, click on that arrow to drop down from our settings, and I just want 5 gigahertz. So 5 gigahertz is the standard now. Everybody should really be getting away from 2.4 gigahertz unless you want that specifically for your IOT devices. So I have an SSID called HDN IOT, and it runs on 2.4, and all my IOT devices are on that. I want my full utilization on 5 gigahertz and the full bandwidth of my capable speeds, so I'm going to use 5 gigahertz. Now you'll want all your APs selected unless you have specific groups and specific APs that are going to be transmitting this SSID. So scroll down to security and expand that by clicking on the drop down arrow. We're going to select WPA2 Enterprise. On the Radius profile, we're going to select HDN Radius. Afterwards, we're going to select PMF is required, and then we're going to click on Add Wi-Fi Network. Something to note here. Now, if you're using the same SSID that previous device is connected to, you're going to have to go into your network settings and forget the wireless connection on your Windows computers. And the same goes for your cell phones as well. So you're going to have to go into the settings there and forget the existing SSID. So now we're basically done, and I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me and I'll help you to my best of my ability.